Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock and it is time for Transformational Talks with Coach BJ. So I am just going live. So I'm going to give a few minutes for people to come on in as we get ready for this talk tonight. Come on in. So I'm going to give it a minute again for people to come on as we get ready for Transformational Talks with Coach BJ tonight. We're going to be talking about a conversation that is just really important, and it really impacts people, I think, sometimes long term, sometimes it's seasonal, sometimes it's temporary. But I think if we were all honest, we could really say that we have all been through a sense of this one time or another in our lives. So if you guys are coming on, say hello. I can see your comments. Let me know that you are here. Hi, Sharika. Thank you for joining. Hello. Hi, Deborah. Thank you for joining, you and Bella. Appreciate you guys coming on. And even if you can't stay long, I just hope you guys are able to get a little bit of something out of this talk. For those of you who are new to my transformational talks, I'm normally here around 20 minutes. I don't take up much of your time. I just like to really hone in on a specific subject. And I like to provide you guys some tools and some coaching around it, just a few tips to walk away with to help you manage whatever that might be. So thank you guys for joining. If you feel led to do so, please go ahead and share this with your family and friends network if you think that it will be helpful to someone. Even if you can't find anybody to share it with, then just take notes. So if it comes up at one time or another, you'll be able to help someone, okay? So again, thank you guys for watching. Like I said, let me know that you guys are here, and we're going to go ahead and get started because I'm mindful of everyone's times, and I appreciate you being here. And for those of you who are coming on and watching the replay, just hashtag replay. Let me know that you was here, and anything you've learned or any questions that you guys have, you guys can post them as we go along. So like I like to tell everyone from the beginning, hi to my YouTube live family, and again, my Facebook family. Again, welcome. And as I like to share at the beginning, two things, transformational talks for those of you who are new with Coach BJ, me. It's based on my perspective, my education, my experience, and my research. So this is what these talks are about. And I also like to ask that you guys bring out your journals and your notebooks because there's a lot of points that I will emphasize that I hope that you will write down because it's so key and so important in some of the things that we talk about. So for those of you who normally join me, you already know to have your journals and notebooks out. And for others, if you're new, go ahead and grab a piece of paper or something to write with, or if you have your computer in front of you, just have something to take notes with, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So tonight's topic, excuse me, I feel like I'm losing my voice. Tonight's topic is the journey from feeling lonely or alone to making the best use of your me time. And, you know, I want to really talk about this topic, as I stated earlier, because at one point or another in our lives, you know, we've all maybe have felt alone, maybe have felt rejected, maybe have felt, you know, lonely, right? And I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, a lot of us, we don't think about is that it really is a difference between the two. So the reason why I really wanted to bring this topic up right now at this time is for two reasons. You know, one, feeling alone and lonely can definitely result in, you know, have a personal and a professional impact and stagnation on your growth, right? And especially during this pandemic, a lot of people are feeling alone and lonely. There's a lot of things that are happening right now, from deaths to violence to the political climate. There's just so many different things that are happening. And so I wanted to really talk about this subject because we're also coming up on the holidays. And to the point I just made, you know, again, there's been a lot of deaths, a lot of losses in so many areas of our lives, and we begin to start to feel alone or lonely. So I want to be able to tackle that subject to help give you some coping skills, some mechanisms around that, a different perspective, you know, on how to really look at this topic, because again, it has such a negative, you know, connotation on, you know, the two, right? And they're both on the opposite sides of the spectrum. But again, they both have a negative connotation when you hear, oh, I'm lonely, or, I'm feeling lonely, right? So, one of the things that's important for people to understand is that, um, again, as we think about loneliness or being alone, they appear to be interrelated on several levels, as I said, but they're really not, right? So, the most important thing that you want to really take note of is that one is a feeling that can be experienced in a multitude of locations, and one is actually a physical state. Excuse me. So, again, one is a feeling that can be experienced in multiple locations, and one is a physical state. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So write this down. You can be lonely and alone, but also you can be alone and not lonely. So write that down. Again, you can be lonely and alone, but also you can be alone and not lonely. So there is definitely various variables to that. And speaking of that, so it's like you can be lonely in a crowded room, right? um but the loneliness and the state of being, it's important to understand, to make that distinction between loneliness or being lonely and feeling alone, because we want to be able to leave room for the opportunity to feel something else different, right? So, case in point, I'm sure there are times that you spend time by yourself, and and you're not necessarily lonely, right? But it's important to understand that, you know being lonely, we're not always alone, right? We have to understand that there's other choices, there's other possibilities that you have to consider, right? It's not just about, again, going back to what I said earlier, the negative connotation that both terms have. So now let's go ahead and break down each, right? So let's first talk about loneliness. So, loneliness, it is a reactive feeling resulting from missing something or someone. It can be a temporary feeling, like when your child goes off to school for the first time. Let's say they were a stay-at-home child up until they went to kindergarten. And so they're going to feel a little awkward, right? Maybe feel a little lonely or detached because they're not in their normal environment, right? But that's temporary. Probably after the first week of school, they're like, oh, mom, I'm loving my friends. I'm loving, whatever the case may be, right? Or it could be that new job, right? That new job, you feeling kind of awkward, okay? Or maybe it's a new industry that you're in, and you have this new job, and you're just kind of like, okay, let me get in here, get my feet wet, connect with people, learn what I need to learn. And then you start learning the language, you start learning the lingo, and you begin to say, okay, great. I think I'm there. Or, once again, it's the transition to college, right? It's kind of similar as the child going to school for the first time. You're transitioning from high school to now transitioning to college, a whole different environment, new responsibilities, right? Your mom and dad is no longer waking you up saying, hey, you need to get up and go to school, especially if you go off to college. You're going to have to set your own alarm and wake up and go to your classes like you're supposed to, right? So again, those are temporary, transitions, right, of loneliness, right? However, there could be some permanent feelings of loneliness. And let me give you some examples of those. So the permanent feeling of loneliness could be stemmed from a loss. So like a breakup, let's say you've been in a long-term relationship, and that's a loss, right? It's not a loss by death, but it's a loss, a breakup, something you invested time and energy in. And, there's the breakup, right? And then, of course, there's divorce, right? So divorce can be short term. You can have been with this person for years and a very long time. And, there you go, right? Divorce, right? So that's more of a permanent kind of feeling of loneliness a lot of times, right? And then you look at death, of course, and that is a permanent separation from someone that you really love, right? So that can also bring on a sense of loneliness, right? So these type of feelings can lead to anxiety, depression, and also prevent you from thriving, failure to thrive, right? Because it becomes less of a temporary loneliness and becomes more of a permanent feeling, right? So distinguishing even between the two of being a temporary, feeling and a permanent feeling. If you get into that permanent feeling and you feel like, okay, I just can't shake this, I'm struggling, I'm going through this long term, then I need to make a shift. Maybe I need to go talk to someone, right, to see if they can give me some tools or give me some help on how do I deal with this, right? How do I deal with that? So that's more of a permanent type feelings, right? So when we experience loneliness in a vacuum, be it a room or we're surrounded by a lot of people, right, we can feel like there's no way of escape. So we feel like we are just contained in this box and we feel like we're losing it, right? So again, those are those permanent feelings, those signs and things that you need to look out for. However, on the contrary, one of the things that you need to also focus on and what you can do to shift that feeling is focus on the relationships that matter. Focus on that person that just decided to call you and say, "Hey, I'm checking up on you," right? Or think about that family member that will bring you a plate sometimes, especially if you're someone that's single and, maybe feel like you're probably not thought of a lot if you live alone or by yourself. But let that person come and say, "I thought about you today, girl. I fixed you a plate," right? Or come on over to dinner and have dinner with me and my family, right? Be grateful. Think about those personal wins or those professional wins. Somebody was willing to help you with a project at work, right? So let's come out of that state of feeling like we're alone and let's focus on the people that are making an impact in our life, right? There are plenty of people that make an impact in our life, but a lot of times when we get into that state of feeling lonely or alone, we tend not to think about those things, right? So this all comes down to your perspective and what lens you're looking at your situation, right? So I'm gonna say that again. It's all about your perspective and the lens that you are looking at your situation, right? So if you view your situation under a negative light, right, or a negative lens where you're focusing on woes unto me, nobody cares about me, I'm all by myself. Of course, it's going to begin to bring you into that downward spiral. But then when you begin to think about those people in your life that loves you and really show kindness and compassion for you and want to be around you and do things for you, that's that grateful lens, right? We look at that from that perspective and realize that, hey, this can motivate me to meet new people, to try new things, to thrive. Those are the type of things that we want to be focused on, right? When it comes to that. So that's loneliness, right? So let's look at being alone. So that's the next thing, being alone. So many people who are not people who are not introverts think being alone is not a desired state of being. Most people assume people are alone because they have been abandoned or have somehow become lost, right? And so this is what people end up thinking. However, people end up alone for a lot of reasons. For some, it's beyond their control, or for others, they've chosen to be alone. So the ones that where it's beyond their control, let's just say that they were married and it just so happened that their spouse got into an accident, right? So if their spouse got into an accident and they became a widow all of a sudden, that was a way that a person ended up alone for something that was beyond their control, right? So there is nothing they can do about that, you know. But then on the other side of the spectrum, I know people who like to be alone. They choose to be alone. They are loners and they are okay with being alone. They know they don't need people to make them happy. um, like a lot of us think, right? So there's some people who choose to be alone. So again, so no matter what the reason is, keep other people's opinion out of your head. Because a lot of people are going to believe that you are alone or lonely for whatever reason they think of or believe, but whether it was, voluntary or involuntary, right? It's not even a consequence, right? It's none of their business. You don't need to get your mind caught up in that, right? So here's one thing that I want you to write down on this end, okay? So know who you are and how you align with your worldview, and you will stay strong. So it goes back to the point that I made earlier about the lens, your perspective, negative or positive. What lens or what view are you looking at this in, right? So, first, know who you are and how you align with your worldview, and you will stay strong. So, if you stay focused on that, then you will stay strong in the mindset of loneliness and being alone. Okay. So, ironically, this is funny. Most self help books mandate alone time, right? Because actually, alone time, and I'm going to give you another perspective to look at being alone, right? Alone time is actually a way that you can actually heal and transform. Again, I'm going to say that again. Alone time is an opportunity for you to heal from certain situations and for you to transform and change, right? And it goes back to what I said earlier, without the opinions of other people in your ear talking about various things, right? So it gives you an opportunity to do the things that you need to do: heal, transform, change, thrive. What are those things that you can do? So being alone really warrants that, right? So I'm just going to tell you, bottom line, the only person you can change is yourself. And sometimes you need to be alone to do it. Can I get an amen, a heart, a like, a comment to say yes? Sometimes we need to be alone to do that. So again, if you haven't already have seen the pattern of what I'm attempting to do in this talk, I'm attempting to shift your mindset as how you think about being alone and being lonely, right? So rather, again, you've chosen to be alone, or you end up there involuntary. There are many positive steps you can take to make the most of your time, right? So I'm going to move into now the joys of being alone. So now I think by now we all have gotten our whole life together about shifting the lens, your perspective. How do you look at things, right? There are always possibilities. There's always a different view. There's always a different feeling that you can take and approach when it comes to something that is traditionally a negative, comes from a negative perspective. Being alone or loneliness. Those are two terms that are, again, both on the negative end of the spectrum of, your way of being. So the first thing I will tell you to do is make a schedule for yourself, because one of the hardest things to deal with when you are alone can be filling your time. And a lot of people will say that, like, man, it's hard to fill my time, and give you an example of, like, those who have had to shift in this pandemic from, going in the office every day, being able to stop by the store and just living free, to now, some people who maybe are not homeschooling or have anything going on at home, where they're trying to figure out how they're going to fill their time, right? Whether they've been laid off, whether their job hasn't opened back up yet, whatever the case may be, you're having a hard time filling your time, right? So let's look at some of the things that you can do. Okay, so number one, plan events and activities you can look forward to, right? And I know you think, oh, we're in the middle of a pandemic, Coach BJ. I don't know if I can really look forward to think about any activities, but you'd be surprised that there are some activities that are going on right now. Trust me, that are social distancing events. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and look online. People are posting things. I think up the street from me, a park, they do movie night, free movie night in the park, right? So there are things that you can do that you don't have to be by nobody. You can have your mask on and you can still enjoy yourself. So again, plan activities you can look forward to. So the next thing is make a list of 5 books you've always wanted to read. A lot of times, once again, before the pandemic, when we led our busy lives, we didn't have time to slow down and really do anything. We always wanted to say, man, I want to support so-and-so. I just bought this person's book and I haven't had a chance to read it. Or, man, I really wanted to really read this series by X, right? But never had a chance to. So think about those books that you've been wanting to read that you haven't had an opportunity to do so. Read those books, right? So the third thing is make a list of 5 movies you've always wanted to watch on Netflix. And this is very interesting because I see a lot of people post now recommendations. What are you watching on Netflix? That's everybody's world right now. Everybody's binge watching TV. I don't think I know too many people that watch live TV anymore, myself included, right? So if you can't think of any movies, if you haven't scrolled through it or whatever the case may be, right? So, and if you don't have Netflix, I mean, look at, your guide and see what's some of the movies that are, out, or some of your favorite shows that are coming back out again, right? Make time to do those things, right? So the next thing most people probably don't want to hear is plan healthy meals and follow through with daily menus, right? This is a way to keep your health and wellness up with what you eat, right? So planning healthy meals, I think a lot of us, we have more time to do that now. So plan accordingly, right? That's something you can do to fill that time. Plan a solo vacation. And believe it or not, even though we are in the middle of a pandemic, trust me, people are still going on vacation, me included. I went to go see my sister for my birthday. So plan a solo vacation. I left my hubby with the kids. So yeah, plan a vacation, get away, reset, do the things that you need to do and come back refreshed and renewed, right? That's another thing. Find information on self-care. If you don't know what you do for self-care, and I don't mean some of the standard stuff you do. Most people say get my hair done, nails done, get my hair cut, whatever the case may be. That's just a traditional self-care. That's something you're going to do anyway because you want to feel good about yourself, right? But I'm talking about do something totally different. If you don't normally get massages, or if you experience something different, right? My girlfriend, I mean, even though I've experienced going to spas before, she treated me to Spa Land, this place called Spa Land, and it was absolutely amazing. There were some services that I got done that I've never done before, and it was just amazing, right? So research self-care things that you can do for yourself, and trust me, you will be glad you did. And then one of the other things that you can do is you can pick up an old hobby or pick a new one, right? An old hobby you might have that you haven't done in a long time. I know some people, one of the things that I know, but my husband used to do, we used to go and play tennis a lot. We haven't done it really in a long time, but it's something I actually want to get back to doing. We used to play tennis all the time in our neighborhood, and I want to get back to doing that at some point soon. So if you're listening. So anyway, or pick a new one, right? So pick a new hobby that you can do, right? So, the last tip is to take a day trip by yourself and discover a place you've never been to before. So, I know a lot of my friends, they'll always say that they go to Callaway Gardens, which is, in Georgia, for those who are maybe watching that are not in Georgia. Jekyll Island. It's just like getaways, right? Chateau Elan. Going to the Georgia mountains, right? There's little getaways you can take a day trip, even if it's nothing, just to look at the leaves, the changing colors. You may not have such a bounce of a view of what fall looks like until you go to the mountains, because you can really see the different colors, and it's a beautiful scenery, beautiful sight, right? So that's one of the things that you can do. Again, take time for yourself. You don't have to just sit in the house. There's different things that you can do, and that you can do again by yourself. Okay. So one of the things I want to say, and I love to tell people, is that, and one thing somebody had to tell me to at one point, if you find it difficult to do things by yourself and for yourself, envision planning it for someone you want to impress, right? So whatever case may be, let them know I can do this. I'm good at, planning events, however you want to do it, right? And then make that person you. So the big lavish thing you just thought of, the big plan that you made, now put yourself in the picture, and you do it for yourself. So I put stars by that, of course, because I want you to write that down. If you find it difficult to do something for yourself, envision planning it for someone that you want to impress, and make that person you. Okay. And I know I always start my talks off typically with a quote, and I'll end it with a quote, but I decided this time to end both of my, I decided to end this talk with two quotes. So instead of beginning with the quote, I wanted to leave you with two quotes. So go ahead and get your paper and pencil down, because these are two awesome quotes. So the first one is, loneliness is not lack of company. Loneliness is a lack of purpose, by Guillermo Maldonado. So loneliness is not lack of company. Loneliness is a lack of purpose. So again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, feel that time, okay? And then the second quote I want to leave you with is, a season of loneliness and isolation is when the caterpillar get its wings. Remember that the next time you feel alone. A season of loneliness and isolation is when the caterpillar gets its wings. Okay? So before we end, and before I thank you for watching, I do want to let you know that on November 12th, we will have our next Ask the Expert. I know we were thrown off a little bit this time, because typically I do the talks the first and the third Thursday of the month, but I decided to do it today, and then we will have our next talk on November 12th, and then in December we'll be back to our first and third Thursday of the month. So again, our Ask the Expert will be Dr. Day. She will lead a discussion on navigating grief and loss during the holidays. So again, I'm talking about feeling alone and lonely, and she's going to talk about grief and loss, right? So if you have any questions about grief or loss that you want to ask during the Ask the Expert on November 12th, send them to any of my social media, DM me, message me, email me. Let me know what your questions are. Let me know what you have personally dealt with as it relates to grief. We've had a lot of loss this year. So I really thought it was really a thing for me to really bring her on because it's so important for people to deal with this, especially during the holidays. How do you navigate that? We've had tons of loss. Some people recently have had it back to back in their family, multiple deaths, right? And what are the holidays going to look like? What is Thanksgiving going to look like? What is Christmas going to look like for a lot of people? Even people are still dealing with loss of parents and people from last year and the year before. And, so many people are dealing with those things. And even if you haven't personally dealt with loss this year or recently where you're really feeling it, I know someone probably have confided in you and have asked your opinion about how to deal with certain things, right? So if nothing else, whatever questions they may have, send them to me and we're going to address them on the Ask the Expert with Transformational Talks with Coach BJ on November 12th. So I appreciate you guys watching today. And as I always say, don't forget to share and subscribe to underscore Coach BJ on all social media platforms and on my Facebook Live channel. As you know, it is the Source of Hope at the Source of Hope 1 on Facebook. So I'm going to go back to the comments and see if there's any questions or anything that you guys wanted to say. I'm glad that Angel joined, Miss Paisha joined. Thank you guys for joining. Miss Deidre joined. Fred, hello. I just thank you guys for joining today. If anyone have any questions that you want to ask around this topic, if you don't want to ask them now, that's fine. Feel free to send me your questions or anything you need support around. That's what these talks are about, to give you support, accountability. And I'm here and I'm happy to help. Again, this platform is about serving and serving only. So if you have any questions or anything, let me know. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. For those who are watching the replay, put in hashtag replay. And I thank you guys for watching. And you guys have an awesome, awesome night. Bye.